Welcome to LeCorner, La Source's digital show dedicated to the sport and entertainment industry. Every 2 weeks, we invite a professional to share their experience, background, and challenges. The sport industry moves fast, and having their insights is the best way to keep up to speed. Welcome to LeCorner.
Welcome to LeCorner, a new episode today with Jose Garnes from SailGP. Hi, Jose. How are you doing?
Hi, guys. Thank you for inviting me. I'm good. Excited to be talking to you.
And today I'm with Samuel, as usual. How are you doing, Sam?
Great. Thanks. Great to be with you guys. I very much look forward to the upcoming hour of conversation.
Cool. Awesome. So basically today we will speak about SailGP, this new competition. It's awesome. Like basically, Jose, as you know, like I watched like the first events like in Bermuda and in Toronto, and it's like crazy in terms of competition, in terms of like entertainment. So we all want to learn more about like what is SailGP and after what you're doing at SailGP. So maybe just to introduce yourself like to our audience, can you like just start by saying like what you are doing, what is your background and stuff like that?
Okay, so well, it depends how far back you want to go. But I am from Mexico. I moved to the UK 13 years ago, nearly 14, and I came to the UK to study film production. I finished my degree and I went straight into TV production, working in sport. At the time that I graduated, London was having the London Olympics, so there was a lot of work on sport creation for the London Olympics. So I work in sport straight away, and I fell in love with that kind of production. I always loved sport, and I always loved creating content. So it was a very, very easy line of work to get into. I couldn't believe that someone was willing to pay someone to just sit down and research sport and then come up with stats and come up with interesting stories that we could be telling. Then if you fast forward the last 10 years, I was working with a production company in London called Sunset and Vine, and I was working there doing content for the Olympics. I spent 4 or 5 years doing content for the Olympic Channel, following other sporting federations like fencing, very random, but that kind of gave me a lot of understanding on how important it is to tell the story for a sport that is not easily understandable, and also a sport that is quite hard to create a connection with the athlete. If you think about sailing and fencing, all the athletes look the same because they are quite heavily covered, right? They have either goggles, they have a helmet. There's not really many.
How to identify them, in fact. Yeah.
Exactly. How do you identify? How do I say I like athlete A, B, or C? And that kind of helped me a lot to understand what is needed so the audience can start relating to the athletes. And then I was lucky enough that SailGP approached me at the end of 2019 to join their team as they had just completed their first season. So I joined SailGP when they were starting to plan season 2, which was at the beginning of 2020. And we all know what happened in 2020. It was a period that a lot of sport took a pause, but for us, it was a good moment as a new starter to really look hard on what we wanted to do and how we wanted to come back. So in 2021, we launched season 2 again, and we have an even busier calendar, which is great for us. And this year, we're kind of focusing on having a full 9 events in our season 2 of SailGP. So that is a super quick summary of where I come from and what am I doing right now.
Cool. That's awesome. And if you need to speak a little bit about SailGP and how you created like this competition, like because basically like I'm not like in the sailing world, but basically now I'm watching a little bit SailGP. Why? Because it's like awesome in terms of entertainment. What was the initial idea to create this competition?
So SailGP really comes from it was co-founded by Larry Ellison, who is the co-founder of Oracle, which is a huge technology company in the US, in San Francisco. and also co-founded by Russelm Coutts, who is an Olympic medalist, America's Cup winner, and an all-rounder sailor. And together they have been working together in the America's Cup, which is a very long-standing sailing competition. And in 2017, they decided to step away from the America's Cup, the way those events were run, and they decided to create a more sustainable championship. And when I say sustainable, it's not just on the eco-friendly side, which is very important and is something that is at the core of what we do, and I can talk about that later, but also sustainable financially, which means that we can actually have a competition or a championship that goes through every year, and it doesn't kind of drop teams depending if we can find the funding or not. In the past, the America's Cup has been very successful, but you need to have quite a lot of funding to just run one team. When in SailGP, what we want to do and what we are doing is have a competition with a solid level of teams racing every championship. And also that allows our fans to be able to be attached to a team. And then we add to that is a nation versus nation. So you have the Australians, the New Zealand, USA, Great Britain, France, Denmark, Spain, having national teams on the championship. That it allows that when we go to those markets, when we race locally, there's a team that the fans can cheer for. Versus in other sailing competitions like the America's Cup, it was a blend of different athletes from different nations, which did allow to have very strong teams, but it was hard for fans from maybe a country like Spain to be able to relate to a specific team.
It's exactly like the kind of issues that you can have in the cycling environment. Like you have like big brands, but they are changing their name like every 2 years, and it's really hard to identify yourself to a team.
Yeah, and it also makes sense because America's Cup, I would say any sports fan knew about the competition, but I'm not sure anybody had a pick of who was his favorite team. It was just like a big event that you followed, but you didn't really create retention throughout the different years. So I guess, I would say, if I understand it well, there were two main objectives: is one, building a more sustainable fan base, and two, building a more sustainable business model to keep supplying content to that fan base and making it a rational business model. Because I'm assuming that between the Oracle side of things that were probably spending a lot of money for the America's Cup that was not profitable at all, and the competitors that were only had big competitions in a very non-often rhythm, I'm assuming it makes sense for those two to pair up and to create SailGP.
Exactly. And I think it's also about making a racing championship that is exciting by having equal boats. So what happens in other forms of sailing is sometimes down to the funding of a specific team. So similar to a motorsport championship, that whoever has the biggest pocket will have the better car or the better sailing boat, which it is exciting in a way because then you can see the pinnacle of development and technology, but then you only see that on two teams, or maybe you only see it in one team, right? And then that's not really a race because you take the fun out of who is going to win at any given moment. And we know that a motorsport championship that is quite famous is struggling with that they only have a one horse race every single race weekend, and they struggle to find a way to keep the interest going after halfway of the season because the winner is probably already decided. So in SailGP, all of our teams, and this is what is exciting, is they have the same tools. There's no a team, if they have a bigger sponsor, they might get a bit more training, but the boat and the tools that they actually have on the water is exactly the same. And also to add a layer to it is all the data that they collect. So when did they did a maneuver? When did they find a bit more gust of wind to make them go faster? All of that data is available to all of the teams in real time, and they can see what the other team is doing. So there's no secrets within the championship, which means that an athlete who is doing very well on the first two races, their advantage can be lost because the other teams can learn what they're doing well, and they then can improve. And likewise, the team that has been doing well, they can see what the other teams haven't been doing well, and they can make sure they can capitalize on those weaknesses of the other teams. So suddenly you create a championship that is open for anyone to win or to lose.
That's super interesting. It's like an like the drafting system of the private American leagues is exactly that purpose, but that one is kind of a 2.0 version of that with more digital, elements that you can capitalize on. That sounds very exciting.
Yeah, and I think that is when suddenly you can, if you start connecting the dots backwards, that you can see that the partnership with Oracle and having them as one of our main partners makes sense, because we could have a sailing series easily, right? Like we can put the event and everyone can race, but then have all the data, all the information that it will help the teams, the athletes, the fans to really dive in and digest and find ways to improve. That is, if we didn't have them, I don't think we will get there in 2-3 years. It would have taken a long time to find the right partner that will be willing to go where we need to go to have all of that data available to us in a very quick time.
Yeah.
Sorry, and maybe I haven't explained this. When I say quick, it's within a blink of an eye. So all of the data is available to everyone in faster than we can blink, which is just incredible. It's not something that you need to wait until the end of the event to start seeing what people did. We can actually see all that information at any given moment. And also our fans can see that information in our SailGP app. And also we're going to be launching a website where people can then see even more information called SailGP Insights that is powered by Oracle.
We're 2 questions in and you're making me want to watch a SailGP event, which I have never done.
Good.
I have another one for you, Jose, actually. Like when you are speaking about SailGP, especially when I'm speaking about SailGP with some friends, I always compare the competition to Formula One. Like, is it a goal to be the reference of sailing like them for motorsport? Because in fact, like the transformation of their competition will be next year. So you are speaking about like more competition between each team. It will be the case normally in Formula One next year. Regarding the content, I think you will have like same approaches too. Do you see a link between Formula One, motorsport, on the SailGP?
Yes, of course. I think that in Formula One, they have been doing a great work. And I think since Liberty Media took over, you could see a real change on the way that we're telling the story. I think the racing itself hasn't changed much because they had a lot of legacy issues on what we were talking about, the teams having bigger budgets than others, and that really struggling to create an even feel. But I think what we could like to emulate is the storytelling and being able to have a consistent calendar that people know when to tune in and know that there's going to be some quality racing, quality coverage available. Of course, we are different to Formula One in a way that we are a sustainable sport, which means that when our boats are racing, we are not burning any fuel, fossil fuel. All of our boats are powered by nature. It's part of our tagline. I know it sounds a bit PR, but what I love about sailing is if you think about a sailing boat and an F50, we can use the power of the wind 3 times of its strength. So what it means that we are 300% efficient. So when you see the wind coming into our boats and we use that to move the boat forward, if it's 10 kilometers an hour, we can create a wind that it feels that is 30 kilometers an hour. When a motorsport car, even the Formula One, the more efficient they are, I think they are around, I think they're up to 80% efficient when we are 300% efficient. So in that side, yes, I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from them, but also I think there's a lot of things that we're very proud of what we're doing. And we think that the kind of offering that we have as a sport and knowing how important it is for the world to be sustainable, we have an upper hand and we can continue to build on this to really become a household name on the sporting calendar on years to come.
Yeah, makes sense. But on top of like the competition level, like when I'm comparing Formula One and SailGP, I think, and maybe because we are like in the business, but we see more and more interest from new generation for new kind of competition like you, because the format is better suited to their consumption behavior, I guess. And I think it's because the content is different, and we think about content when we speak about like new competition. We can speak about Netflix for Formula One, for example, to gather like new audiences. Is it the same on your end? And if
Of
you
course.
can
Yeah,
detail a little bit, like the scope of your activities, in fact.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is this: the sport itself, we know that we need to make a lot of improvements to be a household name. But then on the side of the content, completely, I think we have a huge opportunity to tell the stories of our athletes. And as we have said before, and I think everyone knows, the work that Formula One has done thanks to Liberty Media is huge. The way that they have transformed the YouTube channel. I remember a few years ago to watch a highlights of Formula One was nearly impossible on YouTube. You know, their rights were so controlled by the broadcasters that you couldn't see it. Now, as soon as a practice race is finished, they're there available to you to watch, and they're getting huge numbers. So for me, in SailGP, that shows that fans want to have access to the coverage. That the coverage of the event doesn't have to change. It's just the immediacy or how they can watch it that has to change. That we need to allow our fans to be able to watch highlights, to be able to watch the full race recaps as soon as possible, and not just on broadcast. That we need to be really available in as many different platforms, and that at this stage is your usual suspects, which is Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok or similar, where you really need to start putting that kind of content there, because that's where people are consuming the sport nowadays. And that is one side, right? That is kind of your quick fix sport. Then you have your long format storytelling, which I think we all can agree that Drive to Survive is a great sport documentary. And that kind of has been a conversation topic on almost every discussion that I have about storytelling in sport. You should do a Drive to Survive. And I think that just shows to people that it's only opened the doors to a lot of people that sport documentaries can be entertaining, that they don't have to be the sub story about an athlete coming back from an injury or an athlete having passed away and looking back to the story, that actually a sport documentary can be on the moment, on the season, and what they're trying to achieve and the struggles that are internally within a championship. And I think that is what we want to emulate and showcase, that our sport is rich of those content stories that people can really dive into and start unraveling everything that is going behind the scenes.
Yeah, we had an interesting conversation recently about that, about how to make those documentary pieces closer to real time. Like the most exciting thing would be to have a documentary that's kind of before the race of the weekend. You actually had the documentary of what has been happening behind the scene during that week, right? So there's kind of that element of bringing that into near live content in some kind of way, not near live as bite-sized highlights, but in terms of telling the story as it's happening to have even more engagement. It's something that sounds very appealing in terms of the new formats that should be very successful in the upcoming years. Yeah,
one of my favorite series is Hard Knocks by the NFL. And they do that very closely, which is on the preseason of the NFL, they follow a team and they release an episode weekly, and it's from the week before. And what I love is at the end of the show, you know that it has been done that week because the players react to the previous episode on what people were saying about how they perceive them, right? So it's only for me as a storyteller, it's a nice nod to know, look, we did this on the week. It was pretty hard. And look, this is how the players are reacting. But then talking to SailGP, that's something that we are aiming for with our new long-form documentary series called Racing on the Edge, where we are releasing an episode before every race week. And that episode follows a story of an athlete that happened on the previous event, and that it has a knock-on effect on the race event that you're about to see. And I can tell you that's very challenging to be able to turn around a story that quickly, even with 4 or 6 weeks, because what all the sport documentaries do, like Drive to Survive, is a lot of looking back and taking the time to really unravel the stories and pick the great moments. And they take time. It's not as easy as just say, shoot for a whole week and then put it together in 23 minutes. So what we're finding is is difficult, but at the end of the day, it's worth it because then you catch up the audience who might have missed the previous event or who were actually watching the previous event and they want to see really what is going on behind the scenes and what knock-on effect is going to have on the race that they're about to watch.
Yeah, makes sense. And if you can detail a little bit like to our audience, what is like your daily activity? Not daily, maybe like weekly or monthly. I don't know. That depends on the event, I guess. But
yeah, so my daily activity as head of content for SailGP is really working closely with my production team to plan and strategize what is about to come on the next event and to fill the gap in between event week. So traditionally for us in SailGP, we always see peaks of content and that people are watching on race weeks, which is normal, right? So we have fresh content, there's a lot coming out, people are watching. But then the gap in between events, that's where we see a bit of a dip. We see a dip on content consumption. So the challenge for our team and on a daily basis is how can we maintain that attention and that engagement in between events? So my day to day is just talking about what we should be doing on the next event, in between events, and I'm working with our partners on helping them to tell the story. I know it sounds a bit vague, but it is the whole process of content creation. It's a never-ending process. And also every content idea starts as an idea. And the process from making an idea to something tangible as a piece of video is quite time consuming. And there's many processes that we don't see, but it's just something that initial process needs to happen so we can see something at the end of the day.
On that process, like what is the current relationship that you have with all the teams? Because they are like really key in terms of communication and content gathering to create like great storytelling.
Of course. So we have in SailGP 8 national teams. And the beauty of that is 8 different ways of wanting to create content. And it's great because you have the Australians wanting to do something very different compared to the Spanish, compared to the French. And the relationship that we have with them is very close. And it is important that it's close because at the end of the day, the goal that we have as a league is to grow. And the only way we can grow is by showcasing their athletes, showcasing their story. And that is a kind of a relationship that has to be a partnership. So we're lucky that in SailGP, we are one league with only one franchise, which is a Danish team. So everyone else is basically employed by SailGP. So we have a better access and a better line of communication with our athletes and our team. So we're really able to tell those stories that we need and that we need to tell because they already bought into what we're trying to do. Versus if we were like the Premier League or the Bundesliga, that you will need to talk to the team and say, can we please talk to your athlete? It will help us to do this and that. In this situation in SailGP, we don't have to do that. They are part of the same team, the same league that is trying to grow together.
That sounds like a very right and modern business model. So, and how does that work exactly in terms of their relationship? Do you help them financially? Do you help them by providing them services? What is exactly the mindset that you have around that more MBA approach with maybe team business operations vertical where you would like mutualize some of the services? How does it work on the day-to-day beyond the content piece?
Yeah, so all of the 7 out of the 8 teams are owned by SailGP. Our goal is that as we go through our life cycle is that we will have more franchises so teams can become independent and they can own more of the operation. But for the time being, for us to grow, we need to remember we're only year 2 of this whole operation. We're very, very new. We control and manage and support them with all areas of the business, from commercial, content creation, marketing, and distribution of what we're trying to do, and even event operations. So when we go to Saint-Tropez in France, SailGP will support the local event team to have that event at the standard of every other event that we put in. And And I think that that business model helps a lot, because then we can control a lot of the things that might be difficult for a new startup. So if we just invited a team to be part of SailGP and they didn't have the shared knowledge that we have, it will be 10 times more difficult for them to get up and running and to have a competitive team. And this is what we were saying at the beginning of this conversation, is we're creating a level playing field, right? So if a team wants to join, they will have the same tools in commercial, marketing, content creation, sport performance as a team that has been with us for 2 years. So that really allows them to be at a same level to start becoming the best team, not just on the water, but also on commercially, but also on content creation. So it has a lot of benefits.
Does it mean like if like a new country want to join the competition next season, it's totally doable on your end, or do you have like some restriction?
So we want to have a minimum of 10 teams in the future in the water. At the moment, we have 8. So yes, we will have more spaces available for teams to join. They do go through a process that is above my pay grade. But what we want to do is have a bigger lineup, because the bigger lineup that we have, the more exciting the racing becomes. When I watch Bermuda after 14 months of not racing, and then you see 8 teams on the water racing so close to each other, you go, wow, okay, this is what we're trying to do. Now imagine having 10 boats in the water. It is just going to be incredible, because the athletes that are on board, they're really the best of the best, and they're really pushing the limit to try to come on top. And I think that is what is going to create more excitement going forward, by having a packed field.
Yeah, definitely. And that's awesome. Like if you didn't watch like SailGP, you need just like at least watch highlights, just to check like how it's amazing, like to see like on the sea, like 8 boats as you mentioned, and sometimes you have like crashes and like it's like really, really crazy, and it seems like quite dangerous too, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it's part of why we all watch racing, right? Like I don't think anyone watches a race just to see someone dominate a field. It is good, and we need to appreciate the craft that is behind a team who can dominate. But at the same time, we all tune in for the drama. We all tune in for the action. And we don't want to say that we encourage crashes. Not at all. Is the fact that we want to see athletes competing at the highest level. And to compete at the highest level, you need to have good competition around them. So knowing that we can have a packed field of athletes that are going to go to extremes to win is what we think is going to make people tune in and follow our championship.
Yeah, makes sense. And regarding like the storytelling that you are providing to your audience, are you targeting like more your media partners? Are you more using like your own social channel on platform? What is the strategy around that?
Yeah, so we use a lot of our digital channels. So we have a strong presence on Facebook. We're growing our presence on YouTube, and Instagram has proven quite popular for us. So that's where we output a lot of our content. Race highlights and full race recaps are available on Facebook and YouTube. And that's where we've seen a lot of viewership. Like people are either tuning in live, but also coming back to rewatch in case the stream wasn't available in their country at that time of day. But also we have a very robust distribution partner with IMG, and they help us to be across the world in terrestrial channels. So we are in the UK with Sky Sport, in France with Canal Plus, in Spain with TVE, Australia Fox Sport and Kayo Sport, New Zealand Sky Sports, US CBS. So as a new proposition, to know that you can be in that many territories, and also in territories that we have teams racing, it shows that it helps us to grow and have that visibility. And of course, we use our partners, and we're starting to use them a bit more to help us to tell the story. So our two biggest partners are Oracle and Rolex. And they do help us on kind of share that story of SailGP, but also our other newer partners are helping us as well to tell the story, because what we find out is as soon as people buy into SailGP, even with our partners, they're excited to tell the story. They're excited to tell either their customers or their fans to say, this is cool, you should watch it. And that is quite refreshing to see that people want to be part of SailGP and want to tell their own way, their own story.
Yeah,
definitely.
It is important to say that for a competition that is only 2 years old, to have probably one of the biggest broadcasters in all of the territories that you mentioned, because those are all the key players in those territories, as well as major sponsors that are accompanying you, like Rolex, that really know what they do and have really managed to do very well with their sponsorship, means that there's definitely something very solid happening in the background.
Yeah, completely. And I think that is it is a way to know that we're doing things well, but also a bit of pressure to know we need to keep delivering. That is not just, we have launched this, we are season 2, we know what we're doing. Is, okay, we have the commitment of all these brands, all these broadcasters. Now it's time to keep delivering and to show that this is just the beginning and that we want to be here for the long run. So I think it plays in two ways, having that backing from the people that you just described.
And how do you measure your progress? You want to be there like for a long term, like partnership with your partners, with the media partners too, and your audience. How do you measure the success right now?
Well, I think that's a difficult.
That's a tricky question.
It's a tricky question, but what I can tell you is we didn't start. Well, the Russelm Coutts and Larry Ellison didn't start SailGP as a one-off. Let's just do this for 2 years and then we celebrate what we achieved. This was created with the goal to have a sustainable sport and a sustainable championship. So we want to go beyond 5, 6, 10 seasons. We want this to become a flagship sporting series that is coming every year that you can expect and you can follow. That is the ambition, and I think we have the right foundations to be able to build from that and achieve those goals.
Yeah, and you spoke a lot about like sustainability. Can you explain like more like what you have in mind on what SailGP want to do around this world?
Yes, I think sustainability is always one of those conversations that either you want to listen or you go, here we go again. But I think for us it's very important because it's natural to what we do. Like, as I was saying, our boats are powered by nature. They're powered by the wind. And so it's an easy relationship, right? Like, we're not trying to pretend that we can be more eco-friendly by just flying less. That's something that we're doing, but the actual sport itself is connected hand to hand with nature. So we're taking then a step further by all of our production. The majority of our production is done remotely. So when you see some like one of our broadcasts in the feature, all of the features, all of the TV directing, everyone that is on a TV gallery, which is around 40 people, when you count them all together, they are all based in London. So that means that around 80 flights didn't have to happen to go and cover that event. That all these people just got in one place and they didn't have to fly. And we are able to produce a first-class content production or broadcast production. So what we're looking is we want to reduce our footprint, but also we're using the tools that is already at our disposal, which goes back to how we use our data, how we use Oracle to help us to do that. And as well, we're trying to, part of being sustainable is bringing different demographics and diversity into our sport. And it's not just on the talent that we have on the water. It is very important that we are more inclusive, but also the people that work behind the scenes. I think it is known that sailing is not very diverse, and we're working very hard when we go to events to bring and give apprenticeships to local people from any different backgrounds to join and to see what it takes to put an event. It can be from boat building, event operation, content creation. So for us, being sustainable is not just on reducing a carbon footprint. It's very important, and we're aiming to do that. But it's also diversifying the sport and allowing different people to join and be part of this journey.
Yeah, makes sense. And do you chat with other organizations about that, like to have like a common project?
You're going to get me on this one, David.
No, but actually, like it's a concern, like for you, but like for all organization, I think, like in the sport industry, or not only in the sport industry, actually.
Yeah, sorry. Do you mind if we cut that one up? I do have an answer. Yes. So yes, we know that one of our unique selling points is that our ambitions in sustainability and what we're trying to do, and I think a lot of partners see that the way forward is to work together on finding a more sustainable sport. So most of the brands that join us have that goal in mind, and they have joined us because they know the plans that we have and the big ambitions that we have to be more sustainable.
That's super interesting to speak about like sustainability, and what is the place of innovation for sustainability, but not only in your organization. Like, do you innovate on some specific areas around your concerns?
Yeah, so for us in content creation is we are moving more into the cloud. So all of our media is stored in the cloud, which if you asked me 2 years ago, I would say, I don't want to do that. It would be very difficult to access. But we have partnered with different service providers, one of them being Oracle, and that's where we stored all of our footage, that really allow us to create content faster because there's no processing time, which is just mind-blowing. But also to hold large amount of data that we don't have to put somewhere physically. And I think also that something that is incredible for us on the content creation is we normally have around 10 people on the ground filming content for us. That content then gets sent to our team in London, and all of the features that you see on the broadcast and on digital were sent over the internet and created either on the same day or the next day, ready for broadcast.
So you have a full remote workflow. You have 10 people on site sending the video across to your London IBC, and then from there you redistribute, put the graphics, and deliver the content to all your partners.
We get all the raw and we edit all of that. And by getting the raw, that means that you need still time to edit, right? So it's not just the fact that we can get a file sent to us. Is we getting raw media sent to us at a very, very quick speed. And then that still allows to our creative team to sit down and say, what is the best story? How do we tell the story? And then output that to the world. So that innovation for me is that something that is that you don't see that clearly, because I think we are all used to watching sport on TV and seeing great content. But the majority of those features that you see in other sports, they are created on the ground while they're there. For us, all of them are created remotely, and also goes into our broadcast. All of the camera feeds that we get in, which is 18 camera feeds, all get fed directly back into London, and from there we cut the show live. So all the onboards of the team, so every team has an onboard. Then we have a helicopter that is filming the field of play, and then we have 2 boats that are following the action closely. All of that is sent back to London in real time, and the director is sitting down, watching all the feeds and cutting a show live.
Yeah, and just for our very digital audience that maybe aren't as familiar in terms of the production workflows, but historically, that's where nowadays it's where all the broadcasters are heading towards, have as much remote work done as possible, because it really reduces the cost per production if it's well executed, and also allows you to have a whole other library of feature set because they're all centralized in one place, which makes it easier to capitalize on the technologies that you have internally to have the best possible output.
And I think it's a twofold, right? Because you just say travel. And I think something that we have learned in 2020 and 2021 is travel is becoming more difficult. It is being possible nowadays that with the right measures that we can travel more. But if you have a very talented director, he or she might be booked consecutive weekends because they are working in different sports. And if you need to tell them you need to go to Paris, you need to go to London, and you need to go to New Zealand, they're going to say, sorry, if I have to quarantine, I cannot do them. But now you say you can work all this time in your own home country, then it allows to be hire the best talent as possible without compromising because they need to be going to different places. And also the carbon footprint. We reduce our carbon footprint hugely. And also we become more efficient because if you tell someone that they need to travel to an event and be in a hotel for 4 days and work for only 2 and then travel another 2 days, it's not really efficient when they're just coming in for the days that we are on broadcast and then they're off to the next job. So it really helps us to be more efficient. And once you see it working, you don't see a difference. It is very, very similar to a traditional way of creating content that everyone goes on location, everyone is on the same place.
That's super interesting. And I think like you have an advantage here to have like just 2 seasons behind you because you don't have like a lot of legacy stuff. So maybe it's like easier. I don't know if it's easier to put this kind of process in place, but maybe it's helpful to not have like any legacy right now.
Well, it is it's good and bad, right? It is good because we can be flexible, right? We can say that didn't work. Let's change it. Let's find a way to make it work because, as you say, there's no legacy conversations. There's not someone saying, well, we used to do it this way. Well, we always like to follow this workflow. But at the same time, it's difficult because we are, in a way, pioneers on creating remote production. Our season 1 was one of the first productions that was fully remote. And luckily, we won a lot of awards. But it wasn't easy. And still, in season 2, it's still not easy. All of our graphics are done remotely. So what makes sailing accessible to people is having some graphics over the water so you can see where they're going and you know where they're turning. All of that is remotely. So when something goes wrong, it's still tricky to find a way to fix it. And the delays that occur to fix it maybe are longer if you were sitting next to each other. But the payoff is worth it, that in the future, once things we are comfortable with, you won't see the difference. And the efficiencies will be there to reap the benefit of.
I have a last one for you. Like, is there an impact of the content that you are creating? So basically, like, you are working remotely, so you are not like within the action. So sometimes it can be hard to like find the right message and just like to feel the atmosphere, as an editor. So
I think that was one of our fears. And I think that fear started when we went into working remotely in our day-to-day job for SailGP. But what I realized is that the communication with our team was going to be the crucial part. So having continuous communication on what they're doing, just on content creation in between events, what they're doing and what they're trying to achieve and what we're trying to achieve with that piece of content. But then when we go to the events, I haven't been to the last 2 events, to Bermuda and Toronto. I was in the first event when I joined SailGP in Sydney 2020, but since then I haven't been on location. But yet I think that our content hasn't suffered on the atmosphere. Why? Because we have 10 very talented content creators on the ground that are able to capture that sense of an event happening. And with the information that we get from them, communications, meetings, discussions, we're able to then put that on the screen and make sure that we're giving justice to the event that is happening. So yes, the fear is always there, saying if I'm not there, I cannot really put it on the screen what the event is happening. But also we do have a talented team, and it's just all about building that confidence and relationship between the 2 sides that are working, the guys that are working remotely and the guys that are on location.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, like this year you already had like two events, one in Bermuda, another one in Toronto. The first one with no audience on site, and the second one with audience, right?
Yes, so we are able to have limited audience on site because we welcome people to come on their own boat to the race course, so they can be in a COVID safe way. But you're right. In Italy, we saw a lot of fans turning up, and for us was very exciting because it was the first time we were racing in Italy, and the reaction was incredible. Going forward, we're still going to be welcoming people to our events. There's going to be situations that we might not be able to welcome to a large number of people to be together as spectators. But I think that's where, say, the offering that we have on our digital channels is very important, because we still want people to enjoy the sport, even if they cannot come to our events this year. But our goal, as we were saying, is to keep coming back and to be a long-standing championship. So if our next event is in the UK and there's some limitations of people, that they can enjoy it and then be looking forward for the next season when we're looking to come back.
Yeah, definitely. And it reminded me a little bit the strategy of World Surf League too, because like on site you are like far from like the athletes, far from the action, so it's quite complicated to like follow something. So yeah, that's why like your support in terms of digital and coverage is really key, just to like understand what is happening like on the sea right now.
Yeah, I think when you look at our fan profiles, I see them as, if I simplify it, we have two fan profiles: the super sailing fan and the new audience. The super sailing fan, all they want is raw action. The more we put music and editing, the more they hate it, because all they want is just the raw. They want to analyze it, they want to consume it, they want to feel that it's just there for them. And also they want the behind the scenes. They want to feel part of a team. They want to know if the French athlete is upset or he's happy, how he's feeling about the race that just happened. The new audience is a huge challenge, right? Like, we need to educate a large portion on what sailing is. And when you think about traditional sports, you never watch a broadcast of football, basketball, where they explain the sport, right? They just say, we are here, is team A versus team B, and they go into in-depth on either strategy or the background. For us, if we go that deep in our broadcast, we lose quite a huge portion of our audience. So for us to educate on the sport is what we are working overtime to make sure that we can simplify it so they can understand the basics of what is happening on the screen, so then they can engage and start looking into the storylines and the human aspects of the athletes that are taking part. So for us, is making sure that on the digital and on broadcast, we are creating content that is serving those super fans that just want the raw sailing and what they love, but also creating content that helps new audiences to understand what SailGP is. And then for me, the common ground is the behind the scenes, the human story, because I think both sides of those two profiles can come together on knowing what an athlete is going through, what they're trying to achieve, what are the obstacles, what are they dreaming, what are they hoping to achieve in the championship.
Yeah, makes sense. Super interesting, and I hope like we convince our audience to watch SailGP over the season. I think the next event is in Plymouth in the UK, right?
Yeah, so our next event is on the 16th and 17th of July in Plymouth. As I said, you can watch it on YouTube, Facebook, on our SailGP app. And I think for anyone watching it for the first time, what is exciting for me is the speed that they go. I think that the first image that you have of sailing is quite far, it's boring, it's slow. I don't really know what is going on. Give us one race, and I think you will fall in love with the action and the speeds that these catamarans are racing. It is really exciting, and I don't say it because I love sailing. I'm not a sailing fan. I wasn't, but I am a sport fan, and I love the intricacies that the sport can offer. And I think on the sporting side, we have a lot to offer, and I think people can can start to see where we can go with this championship.
Definitely, and fully agree about that. I'm already convinced.
Yeah, we'll check it out on digital, and we're coming to Saint-Tropez.
Please come to Saint-Tropez. I think it's going to be one of it's going to be another great event of summer. I think in the coming months we're going to have an event every month, and yeah, I think Saint-Tropez is looking to be one of the good ones.
Awesome. Do you want to add something? I think it's already like the time to conclude this podcast. Do you want to add something, Jose, Sam? I think on my end, like I'm pretty happy like about this podcast because we covered a little bit like what is SailGP, what you're doing, which is awesome. And I hope we convince some people to just watch at least one time to have like their own opinion on what you're doing. But honestly, that's really awesome what you created in just 2 seasons, you know?
Yeah, one thing, and before we leave the final word to Jose, I think it's a great use case for a lot of people thinking about how their organization is shifting in terms of the model that is being deployed there, the content distribution strategy, the storytelling that you guys are putting together. It was a really exciting and nice conversation to have, Jose. Thanks a lot for participating.
No, thank you. I hope that this gives a picture of what we're trying to do. I think in SailGP, we know that it's just the beginning. There's a lot of things that we want to achieve going forward, but I think we're proud of the foundations that we have laid down. And on the content side, I think for me, what we're working very hard in our team is creating those storytelling What we're working very hard is to create those stories that can people come back and stay and follow. I think that is what is going to help us to grow and to show that it's more than just the sport, that there's a lot of drama behind the scenes. And I think that it will become a very good entertainment proposition on the years to come.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Jose. And thanks to our audience for listening to this new episode. We hope you liked it as we did. And see you next time. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Le corner.